I stumbled upon a death note, gazing at the Reaper beside me, who tempts me to commit murder. I inquired if there was a printing press available, as handwriting would be an insurmountable task. The Reaper paused, speechless, and remarked, "Do you not possess any sense of morality? Killing so many would surely bring sorrow to your parents." "My parents passed away long ago," I replied. It hesitated for a moment before asking, "Surely you have other relatives?" "Indeed, the inheritance compensation for my parents was unjustly taken from me," I responded. The Reaper choked momentarily, then shifted its perspective. "Did your teachers not instruct you that one must not harm others?" "I was bullied at school. They urged me to endure, claiming it was all my fault." It fixed its gaze upon the pen in my hand, exasperated. "You have hands and feet. Cannot you find work to earn a living?" Working at the factory from 7 in the morning until 7 at night ultimately led to my wages being seized by the agency. The Reaper glanced around. "At least you still have a place to stay." 1. Having consumed the last of my provisions, I had just grasped the salvaged notebook to compose my farewell note when a figure cloaked in black robes abruptly materialized before me. The skeletal visage shimmered with an eerie light in its eye sockets, and its voice emitted a disquieting rasp akin to a rusted iron gate. "Human. This is the death note. Envision the face of someone you despise, inscribe their name, and they shall perish in the manner you dictate. Would you care to experiment?" I stared at the grim Reaper, blinking in bewilderment. Thoughts flitted through my mind. Surely, I had not succumbed to starvation yet. To die in such a manner would be an utter waste. I had just spent the meager 10 yuan remaining on my phone to purchase a knife, with plans to eliminate the agent by dawn. Noticing my prolonged silence, the Reaper likely assumed my hesitation was born of fear. Thus, it leaned closer, enticingly whispering, "Fear not. It will remain undiscovered. Write it down, and your adversary shall meet their demise." It awaited my expression of either trepidation or exhilaration, but instead, I calmly nodded, seizing the notebook to commence my writing fervently. I scarcely registered the Reaper's murmurs beside me. It was only after I had filled 10 densely written pages, my pen exhausted and my hand achingly fatigued, that I lifted my gaze to the bewildered Reaper and earnestly inquired, "Do you possess a more advanced means? Perhaps a printing machine?" "I cannot complete this. It is simply too much to write. My hand is nearly numb." The Reaper abruptly halted, its robe momentarily forgotten. "What did you say?" "I am requesting a machine for greater efficiency. Otherwise, how shall I ever bring them all to justice? Would you not prefer to select one individual to test it first? Is this how we are to commence?" As it hovered closer, it scrutinized the contents of my notebook. "Drowned after struggling in a cesspit for 10 minutes. Crushed to death by a large truck. Loved to death by 10 robust men from Chengdu. Transformed into Peking duck by a madman." The Reaper's rehearsed lines seemed to choke in its throat, and it finally managed to utter, "Do you not bear even a modicum of moral burden regarding these killings?" I retorted, somewhat exasperated, "Is it not you who provided me with this notebook to commit murder?" The Reaper's cloak quivered slightly, as if encountering a human who defied the script for the first time. "Have you not considered surrendering it to the state? The previous owner did just that." I rolled my eyes, responding with resignation. Would the state assist me in eliminating my foes? I yearn for them to pay the price. I desire their deaths. Noticing its silence, I added, "If you lack the tools, do you have any human currency?" "I possess merely 2 coins, which I must reserve for bus fare." The Reaper fell into a profound silence, squatting there, its robe trailing on the ground, beginning to question its own existence. The notebook's last owner had been a virtuous soul, intent on surrendering it to the state, but the Reaper found the endeavor too tedious and thus took her life. Now, it faced a harbinger of death. 2. The Reaper, seemingly at a loss for words, pointed at the notebook and inquired curiously, "If you kill so many, your parents would surely be heartbroken." "My parents passed away long ago. They died on a construction site when I was 4. 2 lives exchanged for 800,000. The Reaper paused momentarily before asking, "Surely you have other relatives?" I nodded, a cold smile gracing my lips. Indeed, my parents' inheritance and compensation were seized by them. They claimed to safeguard it until I came of age, but promptly squandered it on a new car. They even usurped my house, and the land was divided among them. Without them, I might have ended up in an orphanage, living a life better than this. Moreover, because I am a girl, they even contemplated selling me for money when I turned 14. They euphemistically called it finding me a good marriage. The Reaper, momentarily speechless, shifted its perspective. At the very least, you must have attended school. Isn't there compulsory education for 9 years now? Did no teacher ever instruct you against causing harm? I shot the Reaper an incredulous glare, truly unaware of its tactlessness. I did attend school, but I was bullied. They labeled me a parentless, wild child. When I sought help from a teacher, I was told to endure, as it was my fault. Why else would they bully me? Consequently, they became increasingly brazen, and I was subjected to even worse abuse, ultimately leading to my withdrawal from school. The Reaper gazed at the pen in my hand, its tone tinged with resignation. Is society not thriving? Finding a job and surviving shouldn't be difficult. You possess hands and feet. Cannot you work to earn a living? In response to the Reaper's comments, I let out a hollow laugh. As a child laborer without qualifications, I cannot secure decent employment. Initially, a kind employer took me in, but I was reported by a well-meaning individual. He had no choice but to dismiss me. Later, I worked in a black factory from 7 in the morning until 7 at night, only to have my wages seized by the agent. I produced the small knife I had just purchased, presenting it to the Reaper. Look, this is the knife I just bought, intended for the agent's demise. The Reaper remained undeterred, casting a glance around the cramped rental space, smaller than a prison. Although the bathroom was positioned in front of the bed and one could not stand upright, it was still a place to dwell. It gestured towards the surroundings. At least you have a place to stay. I picked up the used pen and hurled it at its head in exasperation, exclaiming, I broke in here by picking the lock. The previous tenant just succumbed to exhaustion last week. Did you not come to collect him? The Reaper fell silent. 3. As my pen had run dry, I found myself engaged in a silent standoff with the Reaper. Not that it had eyes, rather. It was a staring contest with a hollow skull. After a tense half-minute, the Reaper could no longer contain itself. It floated closer, pointing at the notebook with curiosity. How do you remember so many names? I smiled faintly, retrieving a thick diary from my backpack, which contained the entirety of my possessions. The edges of the diary were worn and curled, revealing years of use. I casually flipped open a page, densely inscribed with my grievances. Who, what time, and what they did were etched in my memory with clarity. Gritting my teeth, I spoke in a frigid tone. I began writing in elementary school. Even then, I resolved that when I grew up and gained the means, I would ensure that those who bullied me would face repercussions. The Reaper leaned in, peering at the contents of my journal. On October 24th, Li Yanran tossed my book into the trash and slapped me. Li Yanran, I shall remember you. When I possess the strength, I will strike you until your face swells like a pig's head. A crooked little figure was drawn beside her name, marked with a large Z across its face. The pen had pressed down so hard it nearly tore the paper. On October 25th, Teacher Zhang crossed out my name, insisting that I reconcile with Li Yanran. I refused, and he threatened to call my parents. That Zhang Fugua, I shall remember you. When I am powerful, I will make you kneel for a day, shaming you before all the teachers at the school. A gesture of raising the middle finger was scribbled next to it. On October 26th, Uncle did not go to school and berated me as a jinx, refusing to feed me. Lin Jun, I have remembered you for 3 years. When I grow up, I will ensure you go hungry so you understand I am not a jinx. And you will labor for a day just to eat a single bun. The final lines overflowed the margins. Out of sheer hatred. Nearly every page bore dried tear stains and indented marks from my furious jabbing. The Reaper observed the resentment inscribed in the notebook, glancing back at the death note it had bestowed upon me, suddenly feeling as if it had acquired a counterfeit. The grim Reaper lingered in contemplation for a moment before leaning over with curiosity and inquiring, Has it been a decade already? Do you still recall what they looked like? I chuckled softly, producing my phone. I am aware of their current social media accounts. Some have become internet celebrities, others have pursued higher education, while some have ventured abroad with the assistance of their parents. As I gazed at the glamorous photos on my phone, I couldn't help but grip it tightly. They were indeed bullies, yet online, they were adored by countless admirers. The comment section was flooded with praises like, Sister, you are so gentle, and Sister, you are so caring. Even when I posted evidence of their bullying, fans would rush to exonerate them. Even if I reported them to the police, I would ultimately receive nothing more than a few insipid apologies. I didn't even have the time to file a lawsuit, for I needed to earn money for sustenance. The Grim Reaper observed my silence for a while before waving a bony hand in front of my face. Even if you possess their social media accounts, some may not even show their faces, it remarked. I looked up, a sinister smile spreading across my face as I enunciated, "Have you ever heard of box opening?" The Grim Reaper fell silent, and after a considerable pause, it finally muttered, "What is box opening?" I ceased my laughter, casting a disdainful glance at the Reaper. "What century are you from? You're so out of touch. Just understand that I can acquire various information about them online." The Grim Reaper observed my activity on the phone and murmured, "Isn't that illegal? Aren't you concerned about being caught? Surely, there are police in your world." I shook my head and replied earnestly, "I have great faith in the swiftness of the police. Otherwise, why would I have prepared a knife? I trust they will swiftly apprehend me after I eliminate the intermediary, preventing me from killing a second person." With that, I patted my chest nonchalantly and said, "But given my current state, do you think I care? However, I must express my gratitude to you." People are highly motivated when engaged in nefarious deeds. After a brief respite, recharging my phone, I mustered the strength to rise and prepare for a day's work. With only 2 coins left, I bought a ballpoint pen with one and used the other for bus fare to the labor market. Upon arrival, I followed the intermediary to the parcel sorting area. Aside from myself, there were a dozen or so others there for part-time work, all brought in by the same vehicle. Once the intermediary allocated us to our respective positions, he began to oversee our labor. Standing beside me was a young girl, not much older than a child, who greeted me warmly. "Hello, are you here for part-time work too?" I nodded, not wishing to expend energy on conversation. The girl smiled shyly at my acknowledgement, eager to say more, but the intermediary suddenly shouted at us, "What are you all standing around for? Can't you see the parcels piling up? You think you can earn 20 an hour for doing nothing?" The girl jumped at the sudden reprimand, turning back in silence, even though her hands continued to work. I shot a glance at the intermediary, contemplating how to eliminate him tomorrow after payday. As expected, after 2 o'clock, the intermediary began his tirade. With each passing moment, his insults grew fiercer and more vitriolic. The moment he saw anyone lagging even slightly, he would unleash a torrent of curses upon us part-timers. "What the hell? Are you blind? A bunch of useless fools, unable to comprehend such simple tasks, dumber than pigs, and you think you can earn money? If you people can't handle the work, then just get lost. Nobody wants you here." I paid him no mind, skillfully tuning out his vitriol. The Grim Reaper floated beside me, tilting its head as it observed the spitting intermediary. After a moment of contemplation, it whispered in my ear, "This intermediary resembles a demon from our realm of hell. You are akin to wretched souls whipped by a demon." Exhausted, I had little energy left to engage with the Grim Reaper. However, the girl beside me could no longer withstand it. Just as she was about to confront the intermediary, I held her back. "Don't, he's doing it on purpose. If you get scolded and leave, he saves the cost of 1 worker. After all, you only get paid if you work until morning." The girl muttered a curse, returning to her task, but after taking a sip of water, the intermediary snapped a photo, accusing her of idleness and threatening to dock her pay. She could no longer endure it, rushing over to argue with him, finally glaring at the intermediary. Her voice tinged with tears. "Who cares about your measly $200? I'm done." As she stormed off, I heard her grumbling, "Had I known, I should have just asked my parents for some pocket money." The intermediary, watching her leave, gleefully exclaimed, "The rest of you, if you have the ability, just go. If not, then work properly. A pack of useless dogs, even a dog as efficiency surpasses yours." As soon as he uttered those words, several young people, incensed, also decided to leave. The Grim Reaper observed their departing figures and floated closer to me, asking, "Aren't you leaving?" I succinctly replied, "I have no parents." The Grim Reaper acknowledged with a soft "oh," and finally fell silent. After enduring the ordeal until the end, the intermediary, at some point, snapped a photo of me seated on a stool, claiming he would deduct money. Ultimately, I received only 140. I glared at the intermediary, taking a deep breath before calmly asking, "What is your name?" The intermediary, mistaking my inquiry for defiance, boldly declared himself Zhou Gui. "If you have the guts, go ahead and sue." He reveled in his confidence, aware that no one would expend thousands to pursue a lawsuit over such a meager sum. After all, those who earn their living through hard work generally lack the time, energy, or means to seek justice. Moreover, our phones had been confiscated from the outset, leaving us without evidence to support any claims. I nodded, turned away, and pulled out my notebook, writing, Zhou Gui was crushed to death by 200 gene of cow dung purchased by Mr. Zhang at 6:20 a.m. on August 7th. After finishing, I tucked the notebook back into my bag. Moments later, a scream echoed behind me. Turning around, I saw Zhou Gui half buried in cow dung, with only his hands flailing helplessly above the surface. The sorting staff nearby were stunned, quickly retreating. He was now entirely trapped beneath, the dung obstructing his mouth and nose, rendering him incapable of uttering a complete cry for help. I watched for a moment before turning to leave the warehouse. The morning sun had just begun to rise, blindingly bright. I spent 5 yuan at a breakfast stall at the entrance, purchasing 4 buns and a bottle of water. As I munched on the buns, I made my way to the address I had noted yesterday. Reaching an intersection, I settled on a small stone bench by the roadside. Taking out my phone, I checked the time. There were still 10 minutes remaining. 10 minutes later, the intermediary, clutching my wages, appeared at the opposite corner. The Grim Reaper watched as a large truck flattened the intermediary. It leaned closer, resting a skeletal hand on my shoulder, and said deliberately, "Oh, you truly are heartless, making a child witness their father's tragic demise. He will likely have nightmares for years to come." I turned to the Grim Reaper, speaking earnestly. "Oh, you are so soft-hearted. You are the Grim Reaper, not an angel. Are you aware of the old Chinese saying, 'To cut the grass, one must remove the roots'? He will have no opportunity for nightmares." The Grim Reaper gasped, and as I watched the 3 figures vanish, I slipped my phone back into my pocket and strolled toward the next address. The Grim Reaper silently trailed behind me. In just one morning, it had witnessed at least 40 different ways to die. Until noon, I felt fatigued. As I prepared to return to rest, the Grim Reaper could not help but remark, "You are rather ruthless, aren't you?" I replied nonchalantly, "They merely lost a life, whereas I have forfeited my wages. They previously withheld my pay, and now that I no longer desire it, let it be considered a price for their lives." The Grim Reaper, clutching his scythe, asked in disbelief, "Do they all owe you wages?" I nodded, a cold smirk gracing my lips. There are hardly any conscientious labor agencies nationwide. However, the first one I worked with refused to pay me anything at all. They greedily kept it all. In the midst of the Grim Reaper's lamentations, I returned to the dwelling where I had stayed yesterday. Cautiously assessing my surroundings, I took out a wire and began to pick the lock. The landlord was currently embroiled in a lawsuit with the deceased's family, who were demanding compensation in the hundreds of thousands. Compared to that sum, he had no time to concern himself with this property. I should still be able to stay for a few more days. The room appeared unchanged from the previous day, with an old mattress laid on the concrete floor. In the corner lay the pots and pans left behind by the deceased. The room had no windows, remaining dim even during the day. I tossed my backpack onto the mattress and lay down without removing my shoes. My bones felt as if they had been disassembled and haphazardly reassembled, especially my wrists, which still throbbed with pain. As soon as my eyes closed, a wave of fatigue washed over me, and I fell asleep in no time. When I awoke again, it was evening. I felt my stomach and got up, rummaging through my backpack for bread, which I swallowed down with half a bottle of cold water. I pulled out my phone, just in time to catch Li Yanran's live stream. With a delicate touch of makeup on her face, she held up a donation certificate and smiled at the camera. "Thanks to everyone's support, I donated a portion of last month's streaming commission to the Stray Animal Rescue Station. Though it may not be much, I hope it can help those little ones. And I also thank everyone for your continuous support, which enables me to do these good deeds." The comment section was instantly flooded with "Ran is so kind and I'm a fan of hers," alongside small gifs praising her as beautiful inside and out. The Grim Reaper floated beside me, tilting his skull. "It seems your classmate has transformed into a good person." He paused, seemingly gauging my reaction, and added, "If you were to kill her now, wouldn't you be no different from those who bullied you? Have you considered taking legal action instead? Moreover, you all have grown up. Hasn't the past long since passed? They harmed you, yet you are still alive. Isn't everything fine now? How could you contemplate killing her? When you reflect on this matter later, won't you feel guilt? Won't you worry about the consequences? I lifted my gaze to him and coldly uttered 4 words. You are delusional. Neurotic. After saying this, I ignored the Grim Reaper and took out my notebook to write. Due to 3 consecutive nights of nightmares, Li Yanran during her live stream starts hitting herself while apologizing for her past actions. Ultimately, on August 10th, a fan, overwhelmed, throws sulfuric acid and dies. The Grim Reaper observed my swift actions, the flickering soul fire in his eye sockets, uncertain of what to make of it. I turned off the live stream and continued to reference my notes and the information on my phone, writing furiously. After a while, I glanced at the remaining 130 yuan. Pondering for a moment, I calculated that taking the bus to the train station would cost 1 yuan. The train fare was 60, the bus 10, and I needed to set aside 20 for 2 days' worth of food. That should suffice. I picked up my phone and booked a train ticket back home. The Grim Reaper, noticing my actions, inquired what I intended to do. I coldly replied, wipe out the village. After a 4-hour train ride and a 3-hour bus journey back to the village, I arrived just in time for a feast. The entire village had gathered to bid farewell to my uncle, who had fallen into a cesspit. As I approached, I was intercepted by my uncle's son. He scrutinized me with a furrowed brow, exuding an unmistakable air of hostility. What are you doing back here? You're just going to eat for free at my dad's funeral without giving any cash? The surrounding chatter ceased, and all eyes turned towards me. I looked up at him and calmly stated, I have no money. In fact, you should be the one giving me money. The funds my parents left behind ought to be returned to me. My uncle's son scoffed, dismissively declaring, What are you talking about? There is no such money. Even if there were, it would be used to support you. Our family raised you, and instead of being grateful, you want to demand money? As I spoke, I took the opportunity to carefully observe the expressions of the villagers. All right then, if there is no money, what about the house? The land? House. Land? My uncle's son laughed as if he had heard the greatest joke. That house was renovated by my dad later on. It hasn't belonged to your parents for a long time. The land was also redistributed by the village. It has nothing to do with you. As he finished speaking, a nearby relative chimed in supportively. Exactly, Xiaolin. What do you, a girl, need a house or a land for? Your uncle raised you. You should be grateful. At that, I couldn't help but laugh. He raised me? You all clearly witnessed how he treated me. There were days I barely had a meal. Yet I had to wash their clothes and cook for them. How do you have the audacity to say that? The crowd fell silent. My uncle's son's face flushed crimson as he reached to grab my arm. Stop spouting nonsense and get out of here. You're a worthless thing. I stepped back, evading his grasp. Several uncles and relatives approached to mediate. Xiaolin, you shouldn't speak like that. Talk it over with your brother. We're all family. Don't make it so ugly. The village chief also approached, patting my shoulder with a gentle tone. Xiaolin, let bygones be bygones. Your uncle is gone now. Try to be more understanding. As for the land, it belongs to the collective. It can't possibly be left to a girl. Seeing that not a single person stood up for me, I smiled. Fine, I'll leave. I scanned the crowd, committing their faces to memory, then turned and made my way toward the ancestral hall. Referring to the family tree, I began to ponder how I could annihilate them all. The Grim Reaper drew closer, observing the family tree and exclaiming, This is truly a valuable item, quite convenient for exterminating the clan. However, why is it all male? Is this some form of gender discrimination? No wonder a friend of mine reincarnated as a female infant in your world, only to return the next moment. I remained silent. Feeling somewhat conflicted, I asked, if I write that Lin Guangzhong got drunk and fought with his wife, killing her, and then bled to death himself, would that be feasible? The Grim Reaper tilted his head, incredulous. You wouldn't even spare his wife. I calmly responded, one cannot expect 2 distinct individuals to emerge from the same bed. Moreover, I harbor no bias. If men die, so do women, the elderly, and even children. Does death discriminate based on gender or age? The Grim Reaper paused, then shook his head, declaring, No, you cannot directly manipulate someone to kill another. What about if I skirt the edges? For instance, if Lin Guangzhong insists on consuming alcohol with cephalexin and insists on having his whole family drink as well, or if an elderly lady, fearing waste, cooks rice laced with paraquat for her family, would that count? The Grim Reaper fell silent, helplessly stating, You are far too malevolent. You will descend into hell after death. They are all your relatives. Are you really not reconsidering? Observing the reaction of the Grim Reaper, I nodded. It seemed feasible. Since it was feasible, I took out a pen and began to write. Lin Yaozu, on August 10th, attempted to commit fraud for profit, bringing his entire family along, ultimately beaten to death. Lin Guangzhong, on August 10th, forced his family to save money, consuming moldy leftovers, and ultimately died despite rescue efforts. Lin Shan, on August 10th, swapped his son's allergy medication for vitamins and was struck by a vehicle on the way to the hospital. I wrote from noon until night. Having completed the last name's fate, I stuffed the notebook into my backpack. Standing up, I prepared to find a place to stay. I went to the house that originally belonged to my family. My uncle had passed away, and the other members of his family should have died in the afternoon as well. No one had time to care for me. I pried open the door lock and boldly stepped inside. The layout of the house had been entirely changed. A thick layer of dust accumulated on the table. The Grim Reaper curiously surveyed the surroundings. This is your home. I no longer have a home. You just heard that this house does not belong to me. I paused in silence for a moment before smiling and saying, since my parents died without leaving a will, legally, this house must be divided between my grandparents. My grandparents then gave it to my uncle. Just as the Grim Reaper was about to say something, I suddenly shouted, oh no. I forgot to write down my mother's relatives. It's all their fault for taking the money and never visiting me. I've nearly forgotten they exist. I felt somewhat frustrated. It was already night, and I could only wait until tomorrow to go. The next day, I got up around noon. After finishing my meal, I stepped outside. The village was desolate and eerily quiet. Occasionally, I could see a few corpses along the roadside. The village had lay dead at the entrance, and I couldn't help but smile as I remarked, death is indeed impartial. I borrowed the village head's tricycle. The Grim Reaper claimed it was theft, but I pointed out that I had asked him, and he had not refused. Riding the tricycle, the Grim Reaper obediently sat beside me, still urging me to be kind. I realized that he must have found it unchallenging to persuade me to kill, so he began to encourage me not to kill instead. 3 hours later, I arrived at my grandparents' home. They certainly did not welcome me. After all, in their eyes, I was merely another offspring of a disgraceful lineage. However, it mattered little. I gazed at their photographs, knowing they would all die today. Thanks to TikTok, my uncle had posted numerous videos. The elderly villagers at the entrance were more than happy to share information with me. What a convenient application. Technology truly benefits humanity. My uncle died, the teacher died. The bullies died. They all perished. I joyfully rode the tricycle, humming a tune, with not a cloud in the sky and a pleasant breeze blowing. Upon reaching my parents' gravesite, I noticed a thin layer of dust on the tombstone, and as I crouched down to wipe it, a young man resembling a Taoist priest pointed a small wooden sword at me. He shouted, "You demon, what kind of sorcery have you employed?" I just went to the village, and the entire place is filled with corpses, all dead in a violent manner. I turned around, smiling as I asked, "Do you know who I am?" The Taoist was momentarily taken aback, then defiantly declared, "I do not know. Who are you?" He eyed me warily. I tilted my head and calmly replied, before inquiring about someone else's name, "Shouldn't you first introduce yourself?" The Taoist snorted, proudly stating, "I am Li Qing, a Taoist priest from the Qingshu temple."
Li Qing.
As in the clear water Qing? Seeing him nod, I laughed. "Are you human?" "Naturally." He puffed out his chest, appearing quite proud. I exclaimed, quickly scribbling on a piece of paper that I had long since torn off. The Taoist looked at me, puzzled, as I winked and smiled. "Taoist, would you dare to respond if I call your name?" Just as he was about to say something, he clutched his chest and collapsed. I returned to my parents' tombstone, slowly wiping away the dust. The Grim Reaper mocked my cold-heartedness from the side. I remained silent until a chill swept over me from behind. 2 figures in long robes stood not far away. The black and white impermanence had chains dragging on the ground, and the long tongue of the white impermanence hung down to his chest, their eyes fixed intently upon us. "You Grim Reaper, causing trouble again. Do you know how much additional work you've created for us?" The Grim Reaper nonchalantly replied, "It's amusing. How many people die every day? Why must you keep count?" After saying this, the Grim Reaper looked at me and asked if I wanted to accompany him. The black and white impermanence grew anxious. No. She should return with us to face punishment. I slowly stood up, not glancing at the two impermanences, but rather focusing on the Grim Reaper. You want to take me away? The Grim Reaper hesitated, his voice softer than usual. Isn't it better? If you come with me, you won't have to suffer.
No.
Thank you. I smiled, turning to the black and white impermanence. Are the people I killed still with you? The black impermanence was taken aback, perhaps not expecting me to ask this, and after 2 seconds, he replied, yes. What do you want to do? I grinned. Great, I'll go with you. I look forward to it. With that, I swiftly took my own life. The black and white impermanents were silent for a long while before wrapping their chains around my wrists. I glanced back at the Grim Reaper. He seemed quite unwilling. As we passed through the black mist, the wails of spirits filled my ears. Soon, I heard a familiar scream. It was my uncle's voice. I was elated. Upon seeing me, my uncle and the others struggled to rush towards me, shouting that I had harmed them. Just as I was about to act, 2 figures appeared before me, blocking my path. Seeing the familiar silhouettes, I momentarily felt dazed. Dad, Mom. My parents were still dressed in the clothes they wore before their deaths, exactly as I remembered. My father lunged at my uncle, angrily scolding him for not taking care of me. My mother embraced me, telling me not to be afraid. The ghostly messenger beside us remarked, the resentment she carries is greater than that of 10 overworked individuals who died from exhaustion. You should worry about yourselves, it mused while pulling the group of spirits away. My father floated closer, gazing at me with concern. Even though I was now a ghost, for some reason, my eyes felt slightly teary. Looking into my parents' caring expressions, I spoke with a tone filled with grievance. Dad, Mom, they all bullied me when you weren't here. This world has been nothing but cruel to me. I miss you both so much. Eventually, my parents chose not to reincarnate but to stay by my side. The Grim Reaper occasionally came to check on me, bringing foreign goods. As for that Taoist, I asked the ghostly messenger to strike him with lightning, and he came back to life. I felt quite happy. Although I rolled through a mountain of knives each day, the pain was manageable, and I had grown accustomed to it. Moreover, had I not encountered the Grim Reaper, the ghostly messenger informed me that I would have ended up stabbing a real estate agent, serving a lengthy prison sentence, and upon release, struggling to find a decent job, resorting to manual labor. Eventually, I would fall ill and die in agony, only to descend into hell afterward. Now, things have improved. Due to the many mistakes I've made, I can face punishment in another realm while also taking care of those I wrote to their demise, allowing them to truly experience the notion of evil begets evil. The end of the story. Thank you for listening. See you in the next tale.